Hey, Red Clay Rambler fans. This month we're celebrating 11 years of the podcast. As we launch Season 12, we are having a fund drive, and I need your help to support this upcoming season. If you're able, please visit talesoftheredclayrambler.com/donate to make a pledge through our PayPal portal, or you can become a sustaining member at patreon.com/redclayrambler. We have new merch, including t-shirts, enameled pins, and a beautifully designed poster by Mark Gerard that are up for grabs when you make your pledge today. Thanks for listening and being a part of the Red Clay Rambler community, and let's get on with the show.
Hello, I'm Jeff, Executive Vice President here at Amoco Brent. Over 100 years ago, my grandfather founded Amoco. Today, my brother and I carry on his legacy. Our team works diligently to bring you the best clays, glazes, equipment, and more for your studio and classroom. This week's episode is brought to you by Amoco Brent. Please find your favorite Amoco or Brent product at your local distributor today. Thank you for choosing Amoco for all your clay and glaze needs.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Rosenfeld Collection of Functional Ceramic Art. The collection exists as an online resource for research and inspiration, featuring photos of thousands of objects made by over 800 artists. The images are high quality and can be used with no permission required, making them a great resource for students and teachers. To find out more, visit rosenfeldcollection.com. Welcome to the Tales of a Red Clay Rambler podcast, featuring interviews with culture makers from around the world. This is Ben Carter. I'm going to be your host. If you'd like more information on the show, please visit our website, talesofaredclayrambler.com. Welcome back to episode 464 of the podcast. Thank you all for tuning in. We're here to start the 12th season of this show with an interview with Sergei Isupov. Through his unique blend of figure sculpture and drawing, he investigates the internal and external forces that shape human relationships. In our interview, we talk about his approach to narrative, growing up in a family of artists, and how current events, including the war in Ukraine where he grew up, are affecting his work. To find out more about Sergei, visit sergeiisupov.com. And before we get to this episode, I also wanted to mention that I'm having a Mother's Day sale. If you're looking for gifts for your loved ones, I've got a bunch of fresh pots in the shop. You can find those and shop today at carterpottery.com. Without further ado, we'll get to the interview. We're going to jump around in your career, but I wanted to start thinking about how you tell stories. So I've heard it described as non-linear storytelling, but how do you think about telling a story or a narrative?
Yeah, this is where it's probably have a story behind where I immigrant, and not first time. First time I immigrate like age of 18, to different part of Soviet Union. So it's not exactly immigration, but by their level, it's been immigration. I go to school to Estonia, where different culture, different language, different relationship with artist and art, more free compare Ukraine, where I grew up, where I start study art. And I noticed it's have good things and bad things. Like good things because you kind of exotic. You, in a way, not exactly like everybody. So you have your individual position or view, and same time you're not able to actually communicate so easily. It's still like you're missing some little cultural difference. And I think I start drive on this, like drive on my disability to put on my advantage, and I start express this my visual language become on more expression, not on storytelling. And I explore this more after I moved to US. And here been more dramatic because in Estonia it's still been one country, so I still able to it's still a lot of people speak Russian, and here like really been totally different, more dramatic. I already have experience being immigrants. It's not been so difficult to accept this, and I try to push it more. So all my I try to push it more, communicate with people more through art. And same time, I wanted to people see what they wanted to see. So I not made somebody specific person portrait. I kind of want more general, say like you recognize it's male, you recognize it's female, or you confuse who's who. It's okay too. Like, I mean, maybe I put something between. This is why in early my work a lot men been bold, but this is maybe not anymore so clear statement, but back there. And I using different technique where I get like darker color, lighter color, sharp, smooth, and all this contrast. And I noticed in contrast where you like a juggling, it's like music. You give this not narrative part, but you suggest. I noticed too every time in the opening shows I need to be next to my work a lot of times, and people ask what the story all about. And if people ask, this means I need to give answer. And if I tell them, like I just told you, it's be too vague. You know, it's I still understood too. This is capitalism. You need to sort of selling, not directly selling, like I maybe using this word, not like materialistically way, but you wanted to people appeal or curious or get like, huh? You know, and I need to give some more answer what hook them up. And if they want to see something, they see more. So I'm usually made it up story because it's so clearly to see. I see who they are, what they wanted to hear it, kind of, and there's all these images what are in the front in the work what they're asked about. There are all these images or this texture or female male. It's so easy to make it up some stories. A lot of times I not remember actually even if I have stories, a lot of times I not remember because it's maybe work I already made like 5-10 pieces after this piece, for example, and maybe I not clearly remember what's there. And people a lot because it's my work a little bit more surrealism because I'm using my experience to be good with draw figures and sort of come from culture but narrative art, and I try to
Well, we were talking about nonlinear narrative, but you were talking about that in the beginning you were making up stories and then you realized that you would forget the stories.
Right.
So you don't have to have a solid story to start the work because the sculptures are the canvas for the drawing.
Right.
I think that's
yes,
what you're
that's
say.
true. Well, again, this part I probably describe enough about story, but I able to make it up in the spot. Right. But it's other side of story because it's like 3-dimensional, have a lot little steps in the process what I actually more curious about shape or silhouette or texture, but this is too blank for people to describe. They ask about like images, what on the work, but it's not always this or like technique what I made from like this lab building. There requires some combination. So like I start making object mostly from some shape what intrigue me, and with shape I bring it story a lot because take a little bit time. So in the process to making, like start from sketch, story, narrative story come out by themselves almost. And because I doing kind of one after the next one and next one, so I'm not wait for inspiration. This is what I do. I kind of making work. So a lot of times I need to be force it more this to making next work, and not always I have clear story what all about. So I started, and maybe stories come out in the process. I don't know how honest it's all goes so individual. But I noticed like if people ask me like what the story all about, I noticed I have couple seconds to figure out in what story to go. Real story like where or just made it up story. Yeah.
Okay, so within your work, I like that there's some intuitive process happening, starting with sketching and then to the 3D form and then to the drawing on the form. That's a very intuitive process, start to finish. Do you find when your daughter was young and she would ask you to tell her a story, did you also improvise stories? Like, are you just good at improvising stories?
Mm-hmm. Yes, not really good. I'm interested in you ask this because I noticed too, I'm not actually been good storyteller by out loud. I made it up so quickly. Maybe because actually process in the clay longer and give me time a little bit. And you kind of in your kind of zoom, do. But with a kid, you need to be right away. You need to be sharp, like quick. And I think this is where maybe difference. So I'm not been easy. It's funny later. I say like I'm walking somewhere and think like, I don't know why not tell the story. So cool story, but it's come out later. So maybe this part.
Well, I'm really interested in the way that children's minds work because they will make links between things. I've heard it said as like kid logic. Like they will link things together that are not connected in a way that is very cute and often funny. And I think sometimes when I look at your work, I'm trying to figure it out like a kid is figuring it out. Like, what is the connection between this figure, and that color? So in some ways, the fact that you have a nonlinear narrative, it taps into some curiosity in me that's different than when I'm looking at a painting in a museum. So do you think about generating curiosity in the viewer?
Yes. I want they curious. I wanted they're intrigued, and I want to motivate them to see what they want to see. And this is where like I mentioned, using a lot contrasts. So more contrast, more work vibrating, and depends on what contrast you look it on, and of course, I wanted to intrigue on a different level people who just to see object without notions what they're made from, and appeal to these people who care about how they're made it too. So be quality done so well where people curious on this level too. I almost consider it's like fishing with many hooks, like maybe for truck driver, one story, for professional ceramic, different story on the same object, for buyers, third story, for investor, fourth story. It's like on and on. I not mine. I kind of really intrigued by this trigger desire desire to spend more like a second to see it, or in the best scenario to open wallet and said I wanted to have it. you know it's, and you mentioned too, it's true, because there have like a couple layers of narrative part, because first I build, and after I build, it's just a totally different object, because it's no decorations. It's already have some suggestion, but not really clear. And with painting, I able to put next level of confusing. So same where contrast, like on a subject like female male, or on a texture the shiny matte or a sharp and smooth. Same with sculpture and painting. With painting I try to break form, and with sculpture I want to confuse painting too. So again, like some sort of contrast. What sometimes I do more gentle, sometimes I make more effective, more stronger suggestion on this level. You mentioned too, there's still everything not calculating in the process. It's just intuitive. Maybe because I started making a long time ago. And we're just talking about this collector, Sunny Kim. And he mentioned to me, by statistic, if somebody start do something what he continue in his life before age of 16, he like 90% successful. I suspect because if you're young, you not mind to you learn faster, you not mind to lose. It is not so crucial for you. You're losing anyway in many times. So, and you kind of learn, you build this sort of instinct or taste for what is right, what's not. And I rely a lot on instinct. Even a lot of times I actually kind of draw something by my memory and think like, I need to take photograph, get photograph and learn how you really draw car, like shape of car or something. They just really, and later if I draw, it's become too correct. I still need to be a little bit off. So yeah, I try to be doing from my memory of or on instinct.
Well, I think that leads to the surrealistic feeling. Because if it was, I think you have the skill to do a representational drawing of anything. Like in your hand, in your mind, you can draw specific things. But if it's too specific, then that goes against that feeling of uncertain curiosity that the viewer might have. Which is, it's interesting what you were talking about like some textures you want to be very specific, sometimes you want them to be very gentle, like the contrast. But what I'm interested in is how me as the viewer or other people as the viewer interpret that. So it actually reminds me a lot of, like you talked about being an immigrant and being in different countries where you didn't say this, but sometimes you'll understand some of the language, but not all of the language. Mm-hmm. And I know when I've been an immigrant working in other countries, the words you latch onto those and then you make up the rest. Mm-hmm. And in a way, language is the same way that you do with the visual drawing on the surface of your sculpture. Like there's some touch tones that seem real and some that seem totally fantastic. Like when a figure turns into an animal or when a male-female merge. So can you talk about kind of understanding that, trusting that? Because it seems to me it takes a lot of trust in you to just know, like, yes, this is a good idea. I'm going to keep making it, even if it doesn't fully make sense.
Mm-hmm. This is probably go back to clay, because my first actually school been painting school, and I never been certain. Because you always feel like in the painting, you're always able to come back and repaint and repaint and repaint. And in ceramic, you have this kind of deadline, and there's so many limitations. What you need to be efficient, no material, trust your skill, and later after you finished, you fired. that's it. So that's it in a way, not that's it, but you kind of like, you're done, you next. So yeah, you're able to in next work something learn and making in the next work some difference. But I like how in the ceramic you put after firing you have this it's almost like if you do painting, it's frame for paintings, so it's a finished, and you have this clear definition of finished. I like this, and this limitation give a lot freedom because you can't hesitate much. So in a way you need to be like so straightforward, particularly with clay. If you start change ideas in the process, it's probably get too messy, and in the end in the kiln probably cracks, because you need to be, you can't move clay too many times back and forth. You have probably future cracks or so. Yes, so answer your question. So because this is limitation, give me this in next work to do this chance, so you not fear of put something in, because well, if it doesn't work, I meet the next one. So there's no, to me, does not have this fear. I'm not sure this left or right. You just do it with idea. Well, yes, I hesitate in the sketches. If I do sketch, I maybe take longer to thinking, how to do it. And sketches possibly be really small. In the process, I'm able to draw and thinking, okay, this next step. Like I have actually a funny friend who two-dimensional artist, and he said, wow, I really impressed of your work and really love your work, but your sketchbooks are awful. And hard to for me, well, in the sketch, you said he not draw well. That's what he said. And I think because in the sketchbook, it's like a formula. So I'm not really thinking about page, how I decorate page. I'm thinking like steps. So it's like so almost mathematical steps, but in a drawing form.
So in that way, ceramics is what helps you be decisive. Like you mentioned, it becomes the shape of the figure becomes the frame that you then can draw on. But one of the things you often will do is show, like say for instance, the piece you had in Philadelphia at the Figurative Symposium, Figuring Ground. This was maybe 3 months ago or something. There's a large figure, almost life size, and there's a head looking one way, but then there's also a whole nother body drawn on the underside of the sculpture that makes you think that in a different reality, there's a totally different figure doing something totally different. So what you see at first is different than what you see after you look at it for a while. So how much do you think about that in terms of time? Are you trying to make something in which I have to spend a lot of time with it to understand it?
Probably not. Yeah, I wanted to be intrigued, and I understood this is three-dimensional sculpture. So to see one side, you never see other side same time. So if I intrigued you from one side, you may be curious to go around and see what in other side. This opened to opportunities, so you're able to tell a narrative part. It's already narrative just because you go around, but narrative possible like one side story, beginning story, on the other side, end of story. What I explore a lot, not directly, but sort of suggestively. So maybe one side dark and one side lighter. And because it's three-dimensional, and this is not really sculptural, it's still, I make them like a decorative object. I don't really sure why we need to put label on this one, but maybe with labels it's easier to visually see what it's talking about. Okay, so kind of more comes from decorative part. So I'm not sculpting like really. I wanted to form a human form. You see this as human form, but if you go to check it in anatomy book, you realize this muscle is actually not right. But this is not my goal. my goal to kind of, you see figure, it's figure. You have expression on the figure, and you got it, this expression. So, and but I think this is what made me curious too. What happened? I'm like not mechanically making work in the studio. I'm myself so intrigued. I'm probably first wanted to figure out what it's all about. Again, not directly, but I'm really, many times thinking like, well, I really actually have fun in the studio. And why? If with my family, I a lot of times think, I wonder what my family think if I go to studio, I go to work or I go to have fun. I go to have fun. But of course, it's a lot like pressure, labor, But I still, because I have this curiosity what happened or how it looks like in the end, this made me curious and process. I want to say pretty slow. First you build, and later you wait for dry, and later you painting, and later you firing. It's process pretty slow. So you with work in a close relationship, really sort of close enough for longer period of time. And this made you bond and made you need to be curious, otherwise you just feel like you're just reproducing or making something what you not care about. So each step made me curious. But the switch between technical, I noticed too, this let me actually be more pretty productive, because it's always a switch between physical and where you thinking of this word, like intellectual. So with painting, I remember, like, if I painting straight 3 hours, you kind of already, that's it, you kind of blind, you like not see fresh, you already become like doing because you just do it, but you're not anymore up there. Like I say, maybe some people are able to do better, but I noticed you need to be kind of so alert, and this is so intense with painting. But with ceramic, for example, it's because it's a lot physical, so you're able to switch something you care about, like put straight line, and later something you're thinking like, what color actually is this, or like what is narrative part behind. So you kind of all the time switch, and with switching you're able to be productive pretty long hours. I explore this combination too. I like it. You're able to be in a day work, is still able to be pretty alert. What is what are you doing? So I like this.
Well, you mentioned that if you asked your family, they would say you're going to the studio to play, to have fun. But I wanted to talk about family in general. So both your parents are artists. Your brother's an artist. Your wife's an artist. I would imagine your daughter, I've seen your daughter's drawings. So this is just a general philosophical question. Do you think that people are inherently creative, or do you think that you teach people to be creative?
I think you probably teach, but it's easier if you have same language in a family, because you don't know from what combination, from what emotions you become relate to art or to process. I noticed, because my daughter complained a lot, because every time she showed me what she done, she complained why I all the time criticize.
Because you're looking at it like an artist.
I like it, and I forgot to mention I really like it. The next thing's like, well, this is maybe it's not enough on this level. So she think I criticize. So in a way, it is probably easier if you have the same language. And this is actually why my parents want we with my brother be artists, because they're not have parents artists, and they wanted to, and they're envy to parents like who kids who parents understood and in the same level. So they wanted to we be in the same, so we be artists, so we're able to communicate with them easily. What it's yes and no too. A lot of times parents teach you how not to do it, but this is perfect lessons too. Like if you think in your craft or in your profession, it's if you see it before somebody do it, you kind of know like in what directions to choose, a little bit left, a little bit right. This all actually art. In all life, probably there's on so small nuances. For example, we're walking in the street and we see same creatures like we are, 2 ears, 2 eyes, like one nose, but same time we see so much difference in each. So there's just small nuances what made a little bit this way, a little bit this way in the art. Same. I think it's. This what's so easy to. This is good because you're able to be so free. What you do, not afraid somebody don't like it because somebody probably like it. This is where good to live in a big country with a lot of people, because every time I make artwork and think, well, I don't know about this one, but somebody probably like it.
Well, going back to this family connection, like you said that you think that people can be taught art, but that communicating through visual language in your family is important. And I think that's interesting. I heard an interview, which we were talking about a little bit earlier, where you were talking to your mom who's in Ukraine, and then you were being interviewed. And I was thinking also about your daughter, because I have a daughter who's 1. So I've been thinking a lot about like what we pass on to our family. So what do you think you got from your mom that you've then been able to pass on to your daughter in terms of art?
If today you ask me this, I probably think it's discipline. But how to make discipline for kids where they be fun? Because if you just tell them what to do, they're against it. So you need to make this playful. I remember my father tricked me. He all the time give me different pencils or different tools. What intrigued me, like a pencil with 5 colors, or something mechanical pencil would be so new back there. What else? And same time, of course, you learn a lot from your parents in the process. Specifically from my parents, I learned because I remember my mom and dad made commission, and all the time between each other arguing who be decorating. Because really it's, you asked me what my favorite in the process of making ceramic. I like it. Well, first of all, my favorite it's the open kiln in the end, but after work done. But sculpting is so much effective. You kind of see it process, and you see how to quickly in the end of the day you feel like, whoa, I made this one. With decorations take longer and more. You're not sure how right you done or not with decoration. So my parents all the time complain, like arguing, like who be decorating. In the end, it's become mess, and they're now never, like they're just ruin sculpture, to my opinion. And this has been lessons to me how decoration is so important. So I actually spend maybe in my work maybe 2-3 times longer time on sculptures. So I take it too seriously. This lesson. So this lesson's been indirect, and I think it's probably this how you teach kids too. And of course, you try to give them what you not get. So a lot of times, and but I'm not sure. Maybe you miss it anyway a lot. And I remember I really have fun to making birthday presents for friends, like objects. because it's possible to be suggestible, right? And maybe this is what come narrative part too, because if I'm making directly to somebody, I make more specific narrative things, and this made you kind of enjoy to think what this possibly be and how they'll probably react. So after your question, I start thinking what actually impact me, or like how I look at this work. Yeah. So in America, I not made to somebody or commissions so harder. So for friends, I think whereas money involved made me more stiff, because I immediately think how, if I be in this position, how I be judgeable. And with commission, people already have in their mind what they wanted. So it doesn't matter what you make. This is not the same how they already have in their mind. So a lot of times it's conflict with this one. So I thinking too, probably if I'm making work right now, I thinking about how people to observe my work, or how they see it. And this has intrigued me. I'm really inspired by a lot how people see. But I just noticed right now after we're talking to you, I noticed I never put directly who, not this so-and-so. I kind of made them like a one person. And I remember first I started making these big shows, and in the openings where group shows. In the openings, where these people don't know who's artist, it'd been nice to see how people react to watch your work, and see in their eye reflection how they see it. This has been big inspirations too. Between many works, how they see yours. So all the rest artists has been one artist to me, and how audience watch them and later how watch me. So this, I kind of curious how they're where I am in this package. It's I draw inspiration from this. I want to say it's a change. I already in this career pretty long. All the time change. Does not really have tomorrow. Maybe I have different opinion. And this is what I just tell you, how I've been inspired, how the people watch my work. It's kind of not anymore so much like before, where I've been young artist in US and I wanted to be stand up, people react and see my work. I've been really curious how I able to explore this America, my background, my experience and all this, and opportunity being so high. And this has been a lot of inspirations. Right now, it's sort of more go deeper, so maybe less effective, to my opinion, but I don't know. But it's more curious to me. I still wanted to be intrigued what I do. I wanted to be high in the process, and so you're working a lot on this level, more not on show up or showing up, but more on a level where how I able to be intrigued, or how I able to track this on the next level. So it's interesting.
Well, I have a question about the progression of your career. So you mentioned that when you moved to the US, you're working hard, you're showing a lot, you're establishing yourself as an artist. And there's a raw energy in that. It feels exciting. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. But then now it's your place. And I actually remember as a viewer, when I first saw your work, it was so skilled that I couldn't figure it out. It was amazing to me. But now I've known your work for 20 years, I guess. Also, as people have gotten to know your work, your status as an artist has gotten higher and higher. And so you're showing, pieces in museums versus pieces in group shows. So how do you think about your progression of your career? And I mean the business of art, not the creative part of art making.
Like a business. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's I remember this intrigued me a lot in the beginning too. and again I searched for some inspiration, and this, you're right, this inspired me a lot, this feeling of opportunity and how I fit in, or how I be looks different. And I suspect it's a lot by luck too. Of course, you create your luck. I give a lot chances to luck happens, like I be making a lot work and show it everywhere where possible, and through all these proposals I choose something what more works for me. And this on the level of creative level, this has been really inspiring. And I remember I come to US, I not speak English. I actually have only one word, really. So, and it's been challenging in a way, but at the same time inspiring. You kind of, people talking to you, ta 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 ta. You're like, really? Ta 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 ta, really? So you just change intonation, and the same kind of in the art. I start kind of move a little bit like higher or lower, depends where I show it, and who audience, and this just little tones been so challenging. Well, not challenging, but it, because it's like reactions so need to be so quick, and I noticed right away I can't do selling and making. I noticed right away it's two different worlds. Like I already mentioned, like about if I commission, it's be totally different because I kind of stiff. So I know to be free and be loose, I need to be not deal with direct selling. I love schmoozing. I like to kind of play with the psychology, how people react, what directions to tell them, how to watch my work. It's all part of still creations. After you make work, you still create how the works actually fit in. So you still, even I said like after firing kilns, it's work done, but it's still a lot managing things. It's what pretty creative. But and this has been big inspiration because it's the same like in the art, like in my studio, there's how been in the business too. And to me, because you first have the sketch idea and later you invest time and you see what material you use it and how you're able to use it. Say like small work better with porcelain, bigger work better with stoneware, and same with this business. I see a reflection, same kind of on the same level, so much psychology there. And this really been, it's made like life so excited. I remember I have a lot galleries, but in the beginning I have different galleries what work with me so differently. One gallery all the time call me and say, we need more work. But I already tell her like a couple times, I not have work. I'm working right now on. But she's still calling, and I think, wow, this person not really trust me, or I don't know. So I noticed like with different people, you need to have different language too. With different gallery dealers have different expectations. So kind of working between this level, because I find that if you want somebody, and if you knock in some gallery and you want to ask them represent, usually this first, you hear like, no. But if they're knocking in your door, it's totally different. So you need to kind of play with somehow, so they want you like what their dealer wanted. They create their own art, and their all art business and opportunity and money what intrigue them and inspiration for them. So this means you need to make sure your work valuable and you have enough stock of this work so to able to play with this value of, I don't know, play with the commodity, and and I done this by instinct too. Nobody really taught me this, and I sort of play between like one juggling between shows and between dealers, and somehow works in a way. I still doing what I like to do. I not compromise or lie or play by some rules. Even, of course, if people who don't know how the system works, they say your dealer told you do this type of work. No, of course not. But later I noticed too, if dealers say like some between conversation, oh, people love these animals on your work. Like you're like,
They're subtly influencing you.
yeah, definitely. So you can't stop this observing, because particularly in my work, I so reflect what's around me and everything go in my work in the process, because my inspiration, it's what's around me, like how I live and what I go through. This is go to work not directly by reflections. I spend time in the studio and I thinking about something what bother me, and this unexpectedly go in work. But maybe after I finish work, I realize, oh, it's connections.
Well, along those lines, let's imagine that a museum, let's imagine that, say the Metropolitan Museum was like, okay, we're going to give you a room, and you fill this room with whatever you want. How would you approach that when you're thinking about a large grouping of work versus making a small one-off object?
For a long time, maybe still right now, I have this philosophy about my work. So each work, it's all universe. Like each object, it's everything there. So not you don't need to edit other piece to complete. So in this case, it's be for me harder to say thinking about the room, because a lot of times recently I need to make show where I need to think how I installed this object, and I have difficulty with this because I all this time know I'm not designer of interior designer, and looks like right now a lot shows need to have this quality too, and quality how you represent. I understood how this is such a different business and different thinking too, how you represent. I noticed it's all important about spotlight, like where and how you represent. But because I've been so focusing what to making, so each work, that's it. Doesn't matter in what day of light or time of weather, it's still complete universe where you have bottom, top, north, south, and you have all this combination, like I mentioned, female, male, death, birth, like shiny, matte. So all is already there. I almost feel like I not care about how to install it. So, but to represent this object, that's already important it's already different level. And if I have this commission in made exhibition in the room, I probably more be excited if somebody to install these objects. Of course, my dream or fantasy be just one small object in the big room, you know.
I like that idea, with a really strong spotlight.
Right, where you really, there's no other choice, just look at, and because you come to this room, you want to see it, and because so small, you need to come to closer, and you won't figure out why there's such a big room in so small area. This is fantasies. In the reality, I still know my kind of limits, and same time I know limits of rooms or exhibitions that I do. A lot of times I need to do it by myself, and I like this idea. You still play 2D, 3D. A lot of times I try to install that with maybe some two-dimensional work to, again, make this contrast between three-dimensional and two-dimensional too. I travel a lot in Estonia in the summers, and I see their exhibitions there, and I intrigued how exhibitions there look so much powerful like objects. And I like maybe just different mentality, or this is not bother me much, because I wanted to go back to your earlier questions. If I'm making something what really attends, so they're kind of timeless a little bit, so maybe fashion change, maybe they're not anymore cool like figurative, maybe more cool abstract work, but maybe after abstract, figurative again cool. So I wanted to create something that would be kind of timeless in the way they still capture time, what time I made it, like what in what time of history I made it, but it's not directly, so be kind of fit to any generation in a way. It depends like what more curiosity of time or fashion of the time. So I not it's okay if no I not made right now really cool installation, maybe later somebody made it better installation. If object powerful, I think this power still be there.
Do you mind if I ask you questions about the war?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm interested in how your identity shifted as you got older. Because when you were really young, it was the Soviet era, but then Ukraine became independent, but then you moved to Estonia, and then now you live in the U.S., but there's a war in Ukraine. So how do you think about yourself? Like, do you have a strong national Ukrainian identity? Because your family is still there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's interesting how everything twisted, because with, of course, in the Soviet time, it's all been same, milk jar sell in the same package in Vladivostok or in Estonia, or something but been exactly same. Even with different language or different time zones, it's like, I don't know, like 8 hours difference, time zones, and milk bottle, same. Well, I guess here McDonald's probably same.
Oh, right. Corporations are doing, that.
Yes, so it's...
that's interesting.
And Ukrainian and Russian so close. By my parents, both physically or technically by passport, they're Russians, but they're moved to school in Odessa, like they're been young, 18 probably, even 17, something like this, where they're met, finished school, married, and so I actually physically born in my grandmother town, and where I lived just 6 months, because my mom go there to give birth and go back to Ukraine. So by passport, it's funny, I'm because in the passport you write where you born. So I born, and right now, because it's not Soviet Union, probably correct to say Soviet Union, but you still need to make what land of right now, and right now it's a part of Russia, so they say Russia. But everybody who knows me know I grew up in Ukraine. So yeah, I born only 6 months in Russia. It's not considered kind of I belong to them. But I saw on the Facebook they're kind of fight who's I am. He's Russian. No.
Oh,
he's
really?
Ours.
Who was doing this on Facebook?
Some fans. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of like like I'm not really looking directly who is there, but I just see how they have arguments No. He's not Russian. He's Ukrainian. And I don't know, actually, if they ask me, I don't know who's really I belong to, by passport or language or culture. So by passport, I born in Russia. By language, my first language Russian, because my parents both speak Russian. But I go to Ukrainian school. I grew up in Ukraine, and all cultural things, I'm from Ukraine. What never been topic before, like with me, or I don't know, with me, right? But right now, it's suddenly become issue, or not issue, like it's a totally different level. I think, like, for example, about my brother, he lives in Ukraine, but if happens to be he lives in Russia, I wonder who he belong to. Like right now, he's actually speak only Ukrainian, because it's just right now, it's like a statement, But he, same like me, grew up in a family, Russian-speaking family in Ukraine, and he's a younger guy. And I wonder, like, if he happens to be born in Russia, how he identified himself. Because you can identify them physically. They look the same. So it's sad to see how this right now line get like so unnatural, kind of. But there needs to be, particularly in this case, there need to have like clear reason why. And of course, post fact, I think, of course, this Russia, it's always been like this. But after facts, there you always feel like, I suspect there never be ends easily, but after facts, of course.
Well, you kind of said the same thing about Estonia also, is that it's so small that countries have always tried to edge into the territory and take over. And a lot of that part of Europe is like that. Whatever the dominant force is politically is going to try to push in to the culture or to the country, whether that is communist Soviet Union or now current Russia or whatever. But what I'm interested in is I heard this interview on The World, which people can listen to that now. It's available. And you were talking about you were interviewing your mother, and then the reporter was interviewing you. But then also they talked to your brother, and because he is, I don't know how old he is, but he's under 65. So as a man in Ukraine, he can't leave. But then he sent his children out of the country because it's dangerous to be there. So I think about the way war forces migration. Like you migrated to Estonia to go to school and to the U.S. to be an artist. But then now, like your nieces and nephews, they will have a whole different immigration story because of war and displacement.
Yeah, they're even kind of so vividly clear because they live right now in France. My brother, wife, and two daughters. And one of them, half a year before, been in school in France, where she really wanted to be. So they're kind of pay school. So she got a visa, she got money, she go to the school. She really enjoyed the school, and she come back in winter break, and she need to extend her visa, and suddenly she not able to have instant made visa longer. And in February happened war. So it's been like in 2 months, war started. They immigrate to France because it's been easiest way, and they have some connections where friend to happy to help, like not connected to the school. So she go back to the school where she just 2 months before she really wanted to be. And after this 2 months, because she been forced to go there, she don't want it to be there. It's so funny. Like she really want to there because it's her choice, and after their need to escape, they don't want it to be there. It's on a total different, like, depends in what way you look at. And we, like human beings, so attached for this, like, I choose myself, or I need to told to do it, and this is a big difference. I like this psychological things, and same what we talk about artwork too. I like this difference. I tell story, or you made it up story, for example. Because story what I tell, maybe this is what you don't want to hear it, but if you made it up story what you wanted to tell, like to hear it, you made it up.
Well, I wanted to circle back around, and we'll end with this in the interview with this, but there's some conflict coming into your work, like in the big fire sculptures, there's the maquettes for those, there's men fighting, like boxing. Mm-hmm. So is that a reference to war?
A little bit, indirectly.
Because the other way you depict people is dancing. This is like fighting and dancing. These are things that keep coming up in your work, in differing eras of your work. So can you talk about that, like how people are interacting on the forums relative to world events?
Interesting you depict, but I do this because it's a more interesting shape. If one person, let's be like, well, okay, they're short, tall, okay, a little bit bended, a little bit weird form. But if two people suddenly become so dynamic, like, first of all, you're able to kind of make shape, particularly if in some actions like boxing or fighting, it's possible like a feet or hands stick up from some place where you're not expected. It's interesting shape. Or dancing same way. So a lot of times I put two people or group people together because it's interesting shape. You're able to kind of create some swirling, like something what there but not there. But it's a if we look at if you ask me why, a lot of times I use it. But of course, to do this, I clearly understood I'm making somebody dancing or somebody fighting, so I intuit this too, and I see, so maybe from one side there'll be two people who say fighting, and the other side maybe different story. So particularly in this cube, this female portrait. So you're able to a lot made story, first of all, like 2, 1, and maybe it's a portrait, in this case, like female, so maybe they're fight for her, or maybe women never fight compare men, So you have already like narratives, but I'm not really clear myself. But I create this intrigue, and so say like in a work, figures like full size, but in other side it's portrait on the part detail. So like again, it's a little bit different sizes. Like you made picture of this on the table and said maybe you're staying behind. I see what size is this. So in a way, this is where kind of give perspective, how like give some sense of scale. So maybe
Well, I feel like this is a full circle of the interview, which is that it's very interesting to me how playful you are in the way that you work, and that even though you're a very successful artist, you don't seem to really be bothered that I think one thing or the other about the work. You're just going to make the work and put it out into the world. And I appreciate that, because I feel like a lot of young artists now, they're more concerned with how people think the work is than making the work. And you're the opposite. You're like, I'm just going to make the work, and then people can figure out what it is down the road.
Yeah. Of course, like artists, you're really insecure. But this is what motivation, like if I know I'm best, I don't want mate anymore. You wanted to create something what made you feel like, my next be better. And if people compliment my work, I every time think like, I don't know, my next be better, like, but this is good position. And this is super personal. In our culture, really, I see difference. Not difference, like I say differently, because my daughter go to here to school, and there she come back, and she all the time say in this term like, I'm best, or I'm so proud of myself. And I'm like, I don't know, I grew up with you all the time put you really low, and from this you kind of try to push it up.
Sure. Well, struggling has been a part of your success. Like struggling has built success.
Yes, or like this pushing edge, or like pushing to the edge. Just been doctor visit something regular things, and he's sort of my age, and he said, well, you look okay. They're usually put you on the weights, how much you ate, nothing changed. So like, you look okay, you do exercise. I said, yeah, every morning to the exercise. And somehow I said, well, and I do like cold shower in the morning. And I said, yeah, I do exercise in cold shower. Like, cold shower? You like to torture yourself? I never think about this like from this perspective. Doctors think I'm torturing myself. I'm like, and later I drive back from this visit. I think like, maybe it's true. I torture myself. Well, yes, I like it, but I kind of do it for discipline more. Like, if I torture myself in the morning or like break my fear or things, next I able to be more free. But from his perspective, I wonder if I behave differently. If I think like, he's so good. What next? You next, your work be so genius. Yeah. I don't know. That'd be cool. I would like to try. Too bad it's only one life. I would like to try, but it's something what you bring it with you, like you talk about my parents, something what you taught with your parents. And this old dilemma from my school too, because I go so early in the art in my age, and this has not been my choice. My parents want to be artists, so they wanted to, all the time, like I say, try to motivate with different pencils. I still hate it, but later I stuck with this, and I stuck deep enough where I can already leave. And I remember this dilemma in the school in young age, because you all the time go through museums and see this other art, and you like all the time compare yourself, like where I fit with all this. And it's so insecure, and particularly if you're young, and you see all these names and books of artists or success, and you feel like, I'm nobody. And one point I think, like, I don't know how this come to my mind. So I'm like, well, if I don't know nobody same like me. I mean, I only think so I only able to see it this way. So this means I only want. So I don't need to work so hard to be individual. I'm already individual. If I already thinking, why I'm not like Matisse, or because if you're young, you all the time go through all these classics, or like Michelangelo. Why I'm not so good like Leonardo. His drawings in age of 11 so much better like mine, And later with this realization, yeah, but Michelangelo, but like not with like I'm proud of myself, but with idea like, well, I already individual. I don't need to work so hard to search who I am. I am. I just need to figure out how to express yourself. Well, like how to make it sharp enough to be visible. I mean, to be curious of other people. I mean, we're all individual, but with who you pay attention. Or who you fall in love. Somebody who somehow made this little glimpse. Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good place to wrap up. Can you leave your website and then also social media so people could follow you or get in touch with you if they wanted to talk about any of this? Do you want me to look it up? Do you know what it is?
Well, for this reason, I have my art dealer, and she managed all this so well. I'm just afraid to make a mistake with this. I have social media, I have Instagram, and I have Facebook, and even have little shop on the Facebook. And this part in our conversation, you talk about business. I remember I like it to share with somebody my business, like who sell at work or who manage these things. And after I funded this dealer who really good, and in America, it's 50-50. So, and I think 50-50, I like it. So this is not my business. She not come to my studio and tell me what to do or how to do it. And I not go to her business and tell how to sell it, And this promotion things, it's her business.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my promotions through art, I just a little bit made it up. I'm so embarrassed. I not remember, but that's kind of my excuse. But yes.
Okay. Well, people can get in touch with Leslie Farron, which is, I think it's farroncontemporary.com maybe.
Yes.
And people can get in touch
through
that.
there.
Well, thanks so much. This was a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
I'd like to thank Sergei for taking the time to do this interview. We did this interview in person, so I appreciate his hospitality and welcome me into his studio in Massachusetts. Before we go, I'd like to mention that I have a Mother's Day sale going on right now, so if you're looking for some gifts for your loved ones, you can check that out at carterpottery.com/shop. Also wanted to take a minute and thank today's sponsors. That's Amico Brent, the Archie Bray Foundation, and the Rosenfield Collection of Functional Ceramic Art. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor on the show, you can get in touch through our network website. That's brickyardnetwork.org. I'll be back next week with another episode. Thank you all for tuning in. If you'd like more information on the artists on the show, or if you'd like more information about the workshops and events that I'll be having in the next couple months, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Carter Pottery. Another great way to support the show is to leave me a comment on iTunes. To do that, search Tales of a Red Clay Rambler under iTunes Podcasts, and you'll find a page that's linked to our show. Thank you guys for the support.
This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.